Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes, and I'm a designer on the expansions for the classic Dune board game 2019 edition. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on a treachery card from the Ixians and Tleilaxu expansion, and that card is called Weirding Way. And Weirding Way is a weapon and a defense, and it's special, so it's got a lot going on. And I'm going to talk about its effect, how it works, some edge cases that you may be curious about, how they work with it, and then a little bit about the design, why Weirding Way is a thing, and included in that expansion. So, as I mentioned, it's a weapon and defense. Now, its default is as a weapon, so it has the typical play as part of your battle plan text. Then it says, it counts as a projectile weapon. So, Weirding Way, projectile weapon, unless you play Weirding Way in your battle plan with another weapon. In that case, it counts as a projectile defense. And then you may keep this card if you win this battle. So, this is, first and foremost, is a weapon. It's a projectile weapon, which would be countered by a shield, typically, is your projectile defense. That's your default projectile defense. But let's say that you have another weapon in your hand. Let's say that you have a Mala pistol and you have no defense. Well, you can use Weirding Way as a defense if you play it with your Mala pistol. In that case, it acts like a shield in that it will prevent another projectile weapon from killing your leader. So that is that's the primary gist of it. Now, there are a few interesting nuances that we're going to go over. So first of all is the voice, the Bene Gesserit voice. It's always a question like, how does the voice work on Weirding Way? Well, it's a special weapon, which means that you can target Weirding Way specifically by naming it. So you could say you must play Weirding Way, or you may not play Weirding Way, especially if you know that a player has it. It helps you to take certain things out of the equation if you can target it directly. But the other thing is that it does count as a projectile weapon. So if you just use the voice and say you must play a projectile weapon, and they don't have another projectile weapon, they would have to play Weirding Way as a projectile weapon. Now, the one thing that voice cannot compel you to do is to play this as a projectile defense. Now, if you had another weapon, you could play that weapon in your battle plan, and if you were to play this in your battle plan, it would count as a projectile defense. But the voice cannot compel you to do that. Cannot say, yes, you must play a projectile defense. So that is your one little loophole for getting around the voice in that case. Another thing is, for instance, there's a card called Artillery Strike. An Artillery Strike will kill both leaders unless they are shielded. Now, if they're shielded, then the leader is not killed, but they do count as 0. However, this does not count as a shield if it is played as a projectile defense. It's just a projectile defense, not specifically a shield. Now, I know that level of nuance probably bugs some players, but I, for one, because I love the richness of the details of the Dune universe, I have no problem with this sort of thing, which is why we included it. What are the other reasons why we included it in there? Well, we knew that when we were doing expansion 1, the Ixians and Tleilaxu expansion, that we were interested in having some more treachery cards. Now, in the original Avalon Hill version of Dune, they did do a couple of expansions in the 80s, the Duel and the Spice Harvest, and those both included some additional treachery cards. Some were very good and very interesting, and some of them were maybe not that great. We won't name any names, but you'll know which ones we thought were good because they have since been included in some form or another. Some have not and may never be included. But this idea of having more treachery cards was out there. And a lot of people, when the 2019 edition was made, they have homebrewed their versions of those additional treachery cards because those were not included in the base game when Gale Force 9 published it. And of course, players have been coming up with their own ideas for treachery cards for many, many years. So we knew that we were going to do some, and we did take some inspiration from those original treachery cards that they had come up with and reimagined them or refined the uses of the effects on some of them. But one of the things that we wanted to pay careful attention to is just in the base game, there was what we considered a really good ratio of how many of the cards in the treachery deck are weapons and defenses and how many are not. And we wanted to try to maintain that ratio as closely as we could. So in looking at some of the new cards that we were adding in there, like Thumper and Harvester and a Maul, we're like, we have to counter that. We have to balance that out with a certain number of weapons and defenses. We had to include, we felt, another worthless card, of course, because that fits into that whole ratio of cards. But what we didn't want to have was like, oh, we're just going to have 3 more shields or 3 more snoopers. We wanted to, once again, look at the Dune universe and look for things that were not yet part of the Dune board game, but they are details pulled right out of it. Artillery strike being one of them. It was a kind of an important plot point in that the Harkonnens employed artillery on their attack on the House Atreides while they were on Arrakis. And it was something that the Atreides didn't expect. So that was something that I felt had to be in there. But we were looking at other things. And just the fact that the Weirding Way is a thing in the Dune universe, and it's this sort of intense form of combat that the Bene Gesserit know and that Paul has been learning from his mother. And how can we add that into the game? You know, we're trying to make new stuff fit in with the old stuff. So it was clear, like, this is going to be in a battle plan. We didn't want to create a new category of weapons and defenses, so we fit it into the idea that instead of wielding a knife, you're just wielding your own prowess, and likewise, it's a good defense. So that is the history of why Weirding Way is in the game. That's how the card works, and some special cases for other things that players may be curious about. And if you have any other questions about Weirding Way, feel free to ask them in the comments. And let me know what you think of this card. I really like it. I really love the art. This is Ilya's art. He did work on the first expansion as well as the base game before he was no longer available for doing art. But I really enjoy this. I think it kind of captures the essence. So whenever I get this in an auction or it's dealt to me, I'm very excited. I love getting this card. I think it's really interesting. And if I can get a hold of another weapon and or a defense, I feel like I have a lot of really good options and potentially some surprises that I can employ. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.